My daughter set her coffee spoon across the top of her mug, not inside it. Across the top, handle pointing left. I saw it from the other end of the Christmas table. I kept my eyes on my plate. I picked up my fork and cut into the ham and chewed slowly and said nothing. Across from her, her boyfriend, this man named Trent, was telling my wife about a conference he'd attended in Austin. Something about emerging markets. He had good posture and a firm handshake, and he'd brought a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than I make in a day. My wife was nodding and smiling the way she does when she's genuinely interested. I looked back down at my plate. The spoon across the mug. Handle pointing left. We'd invented that signal when my daughter was 15. She'd called me from a party she wasn't supposed to be at, and she couldn't say that out loud with her friends around, so she'd said, "Dad, I think I left my spoon on top of my mug this morning." I had no idea what she meant, but I heard something in her voice. I came anyway. She was sitting on a porch 2 miles from home, sober, waiting. We never talked about making it a real signal. It just became one. She was 31 now. She had a good job in financial compliance, of all things. She owned her own condo. She hadn't used that signal in years. But there it was. I excused myself to get more water. I went to the kitchen, I stood at the sink and looked out at the backyard and the snow sitting heavy on the pine branches, and I thought, okay. Whatever this is, we'll handle it. Dinner ended the way Christmas dinners do. My wife brought out pie. Trent helped clear the table without being asked, which I noticed. My son-in-law, my other daughter's husband, fell asleep on the couch watching football. The kids ran around the way kids do. Around 8, my daughter followed me into the garage under the pretense of helping me find the extra folding chairs we didn't actually need. I closed the door behind us. She didn't say anything for a moment. She stood with her arms crossed, not because she was defensive, but because she was cold. The garage wasn't heated. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "I asked about 4 months. What is it?" She exhaled. It came out shaky. "He has a friend. A business partner, he calls him. They've been building something together for 2 years. Some kind of private investment platform." I waited. "Trent has been asking me to look at it. Not officially, not like a pitch. Just, can you look at this and tell me what you think? You work in finance, you'd understand it better than most people." "And you looked at it." "I looked at it." She paused. "Dad, it looked good. Like, really good. The documentation was thorough. The projections were conservative, which made them feel more real. They had testimonials, a registered address in Delaware, a website that looked like it cost real money to build." I kept my voice steady. "How much have you put in?" She looked at the floor. 22,000. I didn't react. I'd learned a long time ago that reacting in the first 10 seconds doesn't help anyone. "Tell me the name of the platform," I said. "Crestline Horizon Partners. When did you first hear that name?" "August. He mentioned it casually, like in passing. We were having dinner and he said his friend was working on something exciting and would I be interested in hearing about it sometime?" And I said sure, eventually. And then it came up again a few weeks later. "How many times did it come up before you invested?" She thought about it. 4 or 5 times, but never pushy. That's the thing, Dad. He was never pushy. He always made it seem like I was doing him a favor by considering it. Like he was almost embarrassed to ask. I'd heard this before, not from her, from a buddy of mine from the Army, back in 2019. Different product, different name on the door, same approach. Make the mark feel like they're in on something exclusive. Make them feel smart for being asked. "Does your compliance team know you have a personal investment in this?" She closed her eyes. "No." "Okay." I leaned against my workbench. "I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're 31 years old and this is your money and your life. But I need to ask you some things, and I need you to answer them honestly, not the way you wish the answers were." She nodded. "Have you ever met this business partner? In person?" "No. We've had 2 video calls." "Video calls. Did the calls ever drop? Did he ever have connectivity issues that made it hard to see his face clearly?" She was quiet for a second. The second one cut out twice. "What's his name?" "Frederick Aldane." "Have you searched that name independently?" "Not through links Trent sent you. On your own." I Googled it. "What did you find?" "A LinkedIn profile, a few mentions in some financial forums." "Did the LinkedIn profile have connections?" Real ones, not just numbers. Actual people you could click on and verify existed. She opened her mouth, closed it. I didn't check that specifically. I nodded. I kept my face neutral. This was the part that was hard. Watching someone you love realize they might have already known something was wrong but had talked themselves out of looking too closely. The registered address in Delaware, I said. Did you search it on the Delaware Division of Corporations database? I didn't know that existed. It's public record. Every company registered in Delaware is listed there. Takes about 30 seconds to check. She was very still. The testimonials on the website, I said. Did you run the photos through a reverse image search? Silence. The projections. You said they seemed conservative. Did they account for liquidity? Meaning, what's the withdrawal policy? If you put in $22,000, when can you take it out? And what's the process? 90 days notice, she said. Then they process it within 30 business days. So 4 months if everything goes smoothly. That's yes. And in those 4 months, has anyone ever actually withdrawn money? Anyone you can independently verify? The garage was very quiet. Outside, I could hear the muffled sound of the television and my grandchildren's voices. He showed me a screenshot, she said finally, of a wire confirmation, someone getting a payout. A screenshot he sent you? Yes. I looked at my daughter. She was one of the smartest people I knew. Not smart in a theoretical way, smart in the way that matters, street smart, detail-oriented, careful. She'd built a career around spotting exactly this kind of thing, and I understood it in that moment, in a way I hadn't expected to. It wasn't stupidity that had gotten her here. It was love. She trusted Trent, and because she trusted Trent, she'd given his information a kind of credibility it wouldn't have had from a stranger. She hadn't stopped being smart. She'd just been looking at the evidence through a different lens. I said, "Has he told you not to mention this to anyone at work?" She was quiet for a long moment. "He said it would be a conflict of interest," she said, "given my role." "That's not inaccurate," I said carefully. "But the timing of that advice, who brought it up first?" "He did, before I invested. He said he wanted to make sure I was protected professionally." I nodded slowly. The thing about a well-built scam is that every element has a reasonable explanation. The Delaware registration sounds legitimate because Delaware actually is a common place to register companies. The conservative projections sound credible because most scams use inflated numbers. The advice not to tell colleagues sounds thoughtful because it's framed as protecting her. None of it, individually, would raise a flag for a rational person. The whole architecture was designed to neutralize skepticism while it was still manageable. But when you stood back and looked at all of it together, no in-person meeting with the partner, video calls that conveniently cut out, a withdrawal process that guaranteed 4 months of delay, a registered address that hadn't been verified, testimonials that hadn't been checked, and a relationship that had been carefully cultivated for months before any of this was mentioned. The picture was different. "I want you to do something for me," I said. "Not tonight. Tomorrow morning when you're home and you're calm. Go to the Delaware Division of Corporations website and search for Crestline Horizon Partners. Then do a Google reverse image search on every photo on their website. Then pull up Frederick Aldane's LinkedIn and click on 3 of his connections at random and see if those people are real. Then look up the SEC's Investment Advisor Registration Database and search for the company name and Aldane's name both. And if it's not there, if a company is managing other people's money, they are legally required to be registered. Not being registered isn't a technicality. It's a federal violation." She was very quiet. "And if I find what you think I'm going to find," she asked, "then you call your bank in the morning before you do anything else. You tell them you believe you've been the victim of investment fraud and you want to know what options you have for disputing the transfer. Then you call the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, it's called IC3, and you file a report. Then you call a lawyer. And Trent?" I didn't answer right away. This was the part I hadn't known how to think about. I'd been watching him all evening. He'd been easy and warm with the kids. He'd helped my wife carry dishes. He'd asked my son-in-law about his work with what seemed like genuine interest. He was either a very good man who'd been deceived by his own friend, or he was a very good actor. I didn't know which. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "He might not know the full picture. Or he might know everything, but you can't protect the relationship at the cost of protecting yourself, not right now. She leaned back against the shelving unit along the wall. There were old paint cans on it, and a box of Christmas ornaments we'd never gotten rid of, even though we hadn't used them in 15 years. She looked at all of it and didn't say anything. "I feel so stupid," she said finally. "Don't," I said. "These operations are built by people who study human psychology professionally. They target smart people specifically, because smart people are more likely to do their own research and convince themselves, and smart people have more assets. You were chosen because you're credible. That's not a comfort, I know, but it's true." She wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. "Why didn't you say anything at dinner?" she said. "Because it wasn't the time, and because I needed to hear it from you first." She nodded. "How did you know?" she asked. "The spoon. I saw it the moment I sat down." "I wasn't even sure I was going to do it," she said. "I've been going back and forth for weeks. Whether to say something. Whether I was overreacting. Whether I was being paranoid about someone I care about. But some part of you knew. Some part of me knew." I put my hand on her shoulder. She was my firstborn. She'd been the one who taught herself to ride a bike by watching YouTube videos because she didn't want to ask for help. She'd moved to a city where she didn't know anyone and built a life from scratch in 3 years. She was, in most respects, more capable than I had ever been. But you don't stop being someone's child. And you don't stop needing someone in your corner, even when you're 31 and successful and sure of yourself. Especially then, maybe, because the stakes are higher. We went back inside. Trent was in the living room talking with my wife about something that made her laugh. He had his arm along the back of the couch, but not around her, the way polite guests do. He looked up when we came in and smiled, and I smiled back. I watched him the rest of the evening. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't find it. She texted me the next morning at 7:43. Not registered. Photo of Frederick Aldane is a stock photo from a site called Model Mayhem. His LinkedIn connections include 2 accounts created within the last 90 days with no other activity. "I'm calling the bank when they open." I called her back. She answered on the first ring, and her voice was very controlled, the way it gets when she's holding herself together. "You did the right thing," I told her. "I might lose the 22,000. "You might," I said. "I'm sorry, it could have been more." She paused. "He kept saying there was a new phase opening up. Better terms for early investors. I was thinking about putting in another 15. I didn't say anything to that. There wasn't anything to say. "I haven't talked to Trent yet," she said. "Take it slow," I said. "Wait until you've talked to the bank and the lawyer. Don't tip anything off before you have to." "Do you think he knew?" I thought about the way he'd poured wine without being asked. The way he'd remembered my wife's name from a photo my daughter had shown him months ago and used it naturally, warmly, within the first 5 minutes of meeting her. The way he'd answered questions with questions, not evasively but in the way that good conversationalists do, turning attention back to the other person. I had no way to know. "I think that's a question for people with more information than we have right now," I said. "Let the investigators figure out who knew what." She exhaled. "Okay." "Hey," I said. "Yeah, the spoon. I'm glad you did it." There was a pause. "I almost didn't," she said. "I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was going to ruin Christmas and embarrass myself and blow up a good relationship over nothing. But, I knew that if I was wrong, you'd just give me a look and tell me to enjoy the ham. And if I was right." She stopped. "And if you were right, you knew I'd help." Yeah, I sat with that for a minute after we hung up. The house was quiet. My wife was still asleep. Outside the kitchen window, the yard was all white from the night before, clean and undisturbed. $22,000, maybe gone. An investigation just beginning. A relationship she genuinely cared about now in question. But she'd reached out. She'd found a way to tell me, without words, across a crowded Christmas table, using nothing but a coffee spoon and 16 years of knowing she could. I don't tell this story to brag about some signal we invented. I tell it because of what happened the week after. I was on the phone with my brother, catching up, and he mentioned offhand that his adult son, my nephew, had been talking to him about an investment opportunity. Sounded exciting. Great returns. A friend of a friend had vouched for it. I said, "What's the name of the company?" He didn't know yet. Before he puts $1 in, I said, "Look it up on the SEC's Investment Advisor Public Disclosure Database and the Delaware Division of Corporations if it's registered there, and run a reverse image search on any photo of anyone associated with it." My brother was quiet for a second. "Is this about your daughter?" he said. "It's about everyone," I said. Here's what I've learned. At 54 years old, after watching this happen to people I love, the scams that work aren't the ones that feel like scams. They're the ones that feel like opportunities. They're the ones that introduced through someone you already trust. They're the ones that have all the right paperwork, all the right language, all the right answers prepared in advance. The red flag is never a single thing. It's the pattern, the accumulating weight of small details that each have a reasonable explanation but together add up to something wrong. If something sounds too good but not outrageously too good, if it's been calibrated to seem just plausible enough, that's when you need to be most careful. The obvious scams don't catch smart people. The sophisticated ones do. Check the registration. Search the name. Verify the faces. Ask about withdrawal terms in writing. Talk to someone you trust before you move $1. And if you're sitting at a table with someone you love and something feels wrong but you can't say it out loud, find a way to say it anyway, even if it's just a spoon across the top of a mug. I've been turning this over in my mind for weeks now, the way you turn a stone in your hand without quite knowing why. My daughter could have said nothing. She almost did. She told me she'd spent weeks convincing herself she was being paranoid, that she was about to ruin Christmas, embarrass herself, blow up a relationship she genuinely cared about. And for what? A hunch she couldn't prove? But here's the thing about hunches. They're not random. They're pattern recognition that hasn't finished processing yet. Some part of her had already added up the details and reached a conclusion her conscious mind wasn't ready to accept. The spoon wasn't impulsive. It was the result of every unanswered question she'd been carrying around since August, finally finding a way out. That's what I keep thinking about. Not the scam, though the scam matters, and I'll get to that. What I keep thinking about is the moment she made the choice to reach out anyway. When she was uncertain, when she doubted herself, when the easier thing by far was to stay quiet and enjoy the ham and deal with it later. She did it anyway. That's not a small thing. That is, in my experience, one of the hardest things a person can do. Ask for help before they're certain they need it, before they have proof, before they can justify it to themselves or anyone else. My daughter has never been someone who asks for help easily. She's the kind of person who figures things out on her own and hands you the finished product, so I know what it cost her to lay that spoon across the mug and look down at her plate and wait. And I think that's where the real lesson is, for me at least. The scam worked because trust was weaponized. Trent's relationship with my daughter became the delivery mechanism for something designed to harm her. That's not her fault. That's a deliberate, calculated exploitation of something good, her loyalty, her willingness to believe in the people she loves. You can't fix that by becoming someone who never trusts. The answer to misplaced trust isn't to stop trusting. It's to build the kinds of relationships where you have somewhere to turn when something feels wrong. My daughter didn't catch the fraud by being smarter than the people who designed it. She caught it because 16 years ago we built something between us, a small private signal that meant, "I need you, no explanation required." That's what I'd want anyone to take from this. Not just the checklist, though please, use the checklist. Search the SEC database. Run the reverse image search. Verify the Delaware registration. Those things matter, and they take 5 minutes and they could save you $22,000 or more. But the checklist is the surface of it. The deeper thing is this: integrity compounds over time, the same way debt does. Every time you show up for someone, really show up without judgment, without making them feel foolish for needing you, you are building something. You may not see it for years. You may not know it exists until a Christmas dinner when your daughter lays a spoon across a mug and trusts that you'll understand. My daughter lost money. She may never recover. She lost a relationship she thought was real. Those are genuine losses, and I don't want to minimize them. But she didn't lose her judgment permanently. She didn't lose her nerve. She sat at that table uncertain and afraid, and she found a way to ask for help anyway. And then the next morning, when I gave her a list of things to check, she didn't wait. She was up before 7. She did every single one of them herself, before the bank even opened. That's character. That's what doesn't get taken from you, no matter what. I'm 54 years old. I've made my share of bad calls. I've trusted people I shouldn't have, and doubted people I should have believed. What I've learned is that wisdom isn't about never getting it wrong. It's about building the kind of life where, when something goes wrong, you're not facing it alone. She wasn't alone. That made all the difference.